But if somebody came to me, like you said, and they're like, man, I'm dealing with severe PTSD, if I get the impression that you need to me maybe inpatient because seeing me outpatient once a week is not going to cut it, I'm going to say that because it's not about me, right? It's about you. I want you to get the best outcome. I'll be fine. I'm not presenting with this issue. You are.
Yeah.
I always keep in the back of my mind, not that it is a service, but that even when we go through so much difficult information and experiences that we're trying to learn from and process, that I'm hoping you would genuinely say that you have a favorable outcome. Not a perfect outcome, not that everything went exactly the way you want it, but generally you would say it was favorable. And the reason why, I want you as the client in that scenario to be encouraged in the future to go seek out help again. Not necessarily from me, from
Mm.
anybody. That you not like you don't turn into one of those people who are sort of cynical about it. Oh, therapy doesn't work. Man, I had this guy, he seemed like he couldn't be bothered. He wasn't paying attention. He was just like really, I saw him checking this watch the whole time, just checking the clock. And as soon as it hit time, he was like ready to get me out of there. I never want that to be the impression,
Yeah.
because then they're not going to come back. But even more so, they might, as you were touching on earlier about your college counselor who was talking to you about careers, they might discourage other people,
Yeah.
right? Somebody else might be like on the fence. Does therapy work? Oh, no, 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 no. It absolutely does not work. Do not waste your time.
Oh,
Now we lost somebody else who probably is going to go through more unnecessary hardship simply because somebody else who didn't have a favorable experience is speaking ill of the process. Like I always think about that when I get somebody new, especially. I don't know if you had that experience.
oh, yeah. I've heard people talk about that. Definitely, especially when I used to specialize. I mean, I still do specialize in hypnosis. If people ask for it, then yeah, we'll have a bit of a cheesy session where they lie down and we speak quietly and relax, and we'll do all that sort of stuff, and it's lovely.
Right.
And also, it's not just therapeutic from a relaxation perspective. It's also, quite exciting as well, and it can wake the brain up a little bit and help therapy along for a lot of people.
Mm.
But if you do get cynical people, there is no grey area. It's just yes or no, black or white.
Yes.
It's just no. There's no oh wait. They don't say it didn't. Therapy didn't work for me. They'll just say no, therapy didn't work. Therapy doesn't
Right.
work. Hypnosis doesn't help. Rather than say, well, hypnotherapy didn't help me on that day, in that time.
Right.
There's so much more that can be done if we talk properly. What I was thinking about then is some of the problems that we can have, like we were saying, that therapists, they're ticking the boxes on the bio for the registering body. Yes, I work with anxiety. Yes, tick 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 tick, all the way down through to trauma, tick. And that's a bugbear of mine, that if somebody hasn't done extra training in trauma work, then they might just, if they're not careful, give somebody the same it's good to talk therapy when they've got a real severe traumatic experience, PTSD potentially going on.
Right.
And sometimes it isn't good to talk, or it's good to talk a little bit, but now you've been taught already some emotional regulation skills, and now you can calm down, and we'll talk about it again a bit later. But let's have a distraction. Let's just talk about something else for a bit. Let you ground yourself, which we do with trauma work. If somebody's been told, no, it's good to talk, I'm going to go to a therapist and I'm going to talk about what happened to me when I was 8, because I've been told it's good to talk, and they go from being 9 out of 10 anxious for a month. They have one session of therapy where they're told it's good to talk, and now they're at 10 out of 10. They've never felt worse for a month, and it ruins their life because they were told it's good to talk. Go to a therapist and talk about what happened to you. It'll make you feel better. Yeah, it'll make you feel better if you weren't traumatized, if you don't have great severe trauma reactivity.
Right.
And that's a bit of an issue, that people will then walk away and go, no, therapy didn't help me,
Hmm.
because they went to the wrong therapist, or the therapist pushed them too far too soon because they didn't know what they were doing, or they didn't recognize how traumatized the client was.
Right.
I hear those stories a lot, where somebody will say, look, it is good to talk, but you need to find a different therapist. I listen to this guy's podcast, contact him, and they'll come in and sit down and go, I'm scared to talk because the last time I saw a therapist, it made me worse, not better. I'm like, well,
Right.
thanks for
Right.
letting me know.
No, absolutely. Like, you're trying to learn how to overcome that. I agree. And to make that point, to further build on your point, we need to always know our limits. That's what I was saying earlier about, if it's an area I'm not specialized in, excuse me, I will make sure I say that. Like, if you still want to work with me as I'm trying to learn how to deal with that with you, if I'm open to that, I'll present that. If not, I will immediately say, like, I think you're better off working with somebody who specializes in that area. Like, I remember I had somebody, I want to say it was maybe a year and a half ago, who reached out, who was going through the process of transitioning,
Mm,
and they had to, I don't remember all the steps, in all honesty, because that's not my area of expertise. But I know, like, you have to get some signed letters from therapists who can speak to, like, the experience that you're going through, and they have to also work with a psychiatrist for a specific period of time,
same
and
over
basically
here,
get those signed off from everybody.
yeah.
And I was listening to them. I believe they were Latino, but they were basically saying, like, oh, I think it could help because you have some commonalities with me. But I said very upfront, I was like, listen, I don't have any experience in this area. Like, I'm not really comfortable trying to help you in this particular time, because we're not just talking about exploring the genesis of where that might come from for you. Like, I would be comfortable talking about that. You are very well along in the process, and you're asking me to sort of help sign off on you finishing your
Mm,
journey. Like, I don't feel comfortable doing that because I've never done that before.
mm.
And I very quickly referred them to a few others um, online, because I just
Yeah,
thought that that was in the best due diligence and interest of the client.
we've got to know where our scope of competence is. And if
Yes.
we're working outside of our scope of competence, well, then that's incompetence. We're
Yeah.
being incompetent. Don't do that.
No, I agree. I'm like, I think again, to your point about checking the boxes, I'm like, yeah, there's a fair amount of things that a lot of us can generally work on. But I do think there is an importance of specializing. Like, for
Yeah.
example, I work with a lot of people with racial issues, particularly in the United States, from Black and Brown communities. I obviously work a lot with men. That's why you're here, because we know, based on what we've seen, that not only is there a lack of engagement and encouragement for those men to come in, but we have so many suppressed and repressed issues because we just get taught for so long to not ever talk about them.
Yeah.
So I like to talk about them as well, and then relationships also, because I'm a father, I co-parent, so I talk a lot about co-parenting, parenting in general, trying to manage relationships, especially for young men seeking out relationships with young women. And so those are, like, the areas that I like to focus on the most, because I feel the most confident and competent in those areas,
Mm.
even though I would touch some other things. But if somebody came to me, like you said, and they're like, man, I'm dealing with severe PTSD, if I get the impression that you need to be maybe inpatient, because seeing me outpatient once a week is not going to cut it, I'm going to say that, because it's not about me, right? It's about you. I want you to get the best outcome. I'll be fine. I'm not presenting with this issue. You are.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be, so I appreciate you making that point. As therapists, we need to understand our limits, unless we're going to train and specialize in those other areas. Understand that you can only go with them probably so far, or perhaps you maybe shouldn't even really start the journey with them. You should refer them to a more appropriate person to lead them down that path.